Well, I've grown since last week. This is a lot taller stand. Well, good morning to all of you. Last week we began a sermon on the parables of the kingdom. And as it would happen, I wasn't able to get finished, but we plan to kind of work our way through it today. And I want to start by asking a couple of questions. How many of you have been in algebra class? Had an algebra class? How many of you fully understood it? Yeah. How many had questions about what was going on? How many of you were afraid to ask the teacher questions because you felt kind of dumb? Okay? Yeah, those are things. Well, today we're in algebra class. But we're going to ask some questions and we're going to take a look at some of these things. So I may need the microphones for Mac and Roy. I thought about doing this two different ways. I thought about this side being over here, the side of the believers. And these over here being the questioners of unbelief. Because you see, sometimes we encounter things where we really don't believe. You know, we want to say to the teacher, are you sure about that? Does that seem right? So maybe as we go through here, we're going to take a look at some questions that we may consider. So if you want to be a believer, you'll be on this side. If you would be an unbeliever with question, you're going to stay over here. Good. You want to be contentious. Good. So we started off here. So if you'll give one to Roy and give one to Mac in case we just kind of pass these around. We started off with the parables of the kingdom in Matthew 13. But I wanted to preface it with what Jesus said beforehand because he has asked this very provocative question. They said, well, your brothers and sisters are outside, and Jesus makes a statement, who are my mother and my brothers and sisters? And then he says, those that do the will of the Father, that they are. And then he moves into parables. Immediately in the same day, this is the context of learning. And when we think about these parables, they really do have to do about who are the children of the kingdom of God, who are Jesus' brothers and sisters in this regard, and some of the lessons that we learn as brothers and sisters of Jesus. And he started off here, of course, with this parable about a farmer who went out to sow seed, and he scatters the seed on all over the place. Some is on good ground, some is on less than good ground, some is on hard, stony, rocky ground. And what we discussed a little bit last week is that the sower was busy sowing seed everywhere. And it is sometimes an assumption that we make that, well, if it's sown on stony ground, that all these things are going to happen because it's going to grow up quick and then the sun comes and parches it. But the question we were asking ourselves is, well, what is our responsibility as far as the ground is concerned? Do we have any responsibility about becoming good ground, fertile ground? You know, sometimes our life starts off pretty stony. In fact, Jeanette's remark about being a worm, we look at our lives and we think, how in the world can I ever make anything of myself? And yet, if any one of us were promised that we could be taken out of the ghetto, for example, and become president of the United States, or far more than that, that we could become sons of God, and we could have a relationship with God, we could be a brother or sister of Jesus and live eternally and live happily and have this incredible relationship, how do we respond to that? And all we had to do is dedicate or commit our lives for, let's say, 30 years. Let's say God would call us and we would respond to Him when we're 50 and we live to be 80. But let's say, I say 30 years because if I say a lifetime, people say, well, that's forever. I don't know if I could do this forever, and we respond a little differently. But if I were to say, for example, you could become a billionaire in 30 days, how many people would take us up on that? Well, wow, that quickly, if I could just do that? Then I would jump at that because that's real quick. Well, in reality, for those of individuals whose lives have gotten older, and they're still very happy that they're getting older, and the like, we recognize that life goes by in just a moment. And Charles made this interesting observation. This is kind of an interjection in the sermon. Charles probably put as beautifully today in his prayer as I've ever heard, in terms of we're not here because of numbers. We're here to get together with one another, to see one another. That's probably as beautifully put, an understanding of what God is doing in our lives, that He brings us together, whether we're 2 or 3 or 200 or 300 or 20,000 or 2 million or whatever. And it's something for us to understand, because your point, Charles, really goes with the parable of the leavening and the parable of the mustard seed that we're going to look at here today as well. But the point for us to understand is how much would we value that if we recognize that was going to happen. So the seed is sown, and some increases 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold, some go through, and then Jesus begins to explain this parable to them. And He lets them know, His disciples, they ask Him, why do you speak to people in parables? And it's a good question. I mean, that probably is somewhere between the unbeliever and the believing. Why do you speak to people in parables? It doesn't seem fair. And in fact, what does Jesus tell us here? He says, seeing they do not see, and though they hear, they do not hear or understand. And He says, it's to fulfill a prophecy. So if we were to ask Jesus, what kind of question would the unbeliever have of Jesus in this parable, and what kind of question might the believer have? So the unbeliever over here.
Why would you talk to me in such a way that you know I can't understand?
What? Yeah, why would I talk to you in a way that you would not understand? Do you want the truth? Is that funny? Do you want the truth? Oh, that is beautiful, Jeanette, because really you think you're sure until he asks the question. And what the believer, what might be the answer to that question? Why do you speak to me in such a way I can't understand? It doesn't seem fair. Does a believer have a response to that? Roy?
Well, the only response is that maybe you're not meant to understand at this point in time. Maybe things have to be revealed to you in your time, not the time that you think that the time is that you should have things revealed. That's why God spoke, that everybody would know openly what He was speaking about, so you'll be protected from yourself.
Protected from yourself. So a question Jesus might ask, what would you do with it? If I did tell you the truth, what would you do with it? And when would you do what you would do with it? Would you delay? Would you do it today? Would you agree? Would you say it's too tough? When he got the truth, he went away sorrowful. But you see, he pressed Jesus on that. You see, Jesus didn't tell him the truth. I mean, he didn't tell him the full story. Jesus said, well, you need to do this. But he kept pressing Jesus, and you keep pressing Jesus, and you keep pressing Jesus. And because, why did he press Jesus? Why do you think he pressed Jesus?
He wanted Jesus to say, oh, you got it.
That's, I think the rich young ruler thought that he really was right. He wanted to hear accolades from Jesus, that he was really good, and that he had done wonderful things.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? We can help. Log on to worldwidechurchofgod.com or wcgfairfield.blogspot.com and stay connected to reality. The Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto are located in the San Francisco Bay Area, regarded as the most prosperous region in the United States. We believe Jesus Christ when he proclaimed in Matthew 6:24 that serving God is more important than serving mammon. We welcome everyone to come and worship and fellowship every Saturday at the times listed on your screen and on our website, worldwidechurchofgod.com.